I want to start with transhumanism, which is everyone's favorite topic. So there was a video that went viral this week. I wanted you guys get your guys' take on this. This video by somebody named Laura Aboli, who I'm unfamiliar with, but she said some things and espoused a particular theory that I was wanting to talk to you guys about, wanting to explore. Apologize for the annoying background music in this clip, but I would love us to listen to this one and talk about it. So we're going to listen to her for a minute and then see where this goes. Here we go.
The destination, it becomes much easier to look back and identify the psychological conditioning, the biological tempering, the cultural grooming, and the educational prepping that we have been subjected to for decades in preparation to making us accept a post-human future.
So this is her thesis, is that there is a broad, I don't know if she would say a conspiracy, but something is happening that kind of move us, that's fundamentally anti-human about where we're headed, and that we are being groomed to participate in the annihilation of our species. That's all. You know, nothing alarming.
It takes a lot of physical and psychological abuse to get an intelligent species like ours to agree to its own extinction. Most, if not all, that has transcended in the last 60 years was designed to get us closer to accepting such a dystopian reality. Whether you care to accept it or not, we live in a hyper-controlled matrix where our perception of reality is meticulously planned, managed, and executed in order to control and steer us in whichever direction they wish. And the direction is a post-human world.
Now she's using the word they. They wish, okay, the scary they. So we can talk about who they may be, but that's another piece of this.
For this, they first needed to destabilize, dehumanize, and demoralize humanity through every means possible. The destruction of the nuclear family, children being indoctrinated by the state, abortion, the eradication of God and spirituality from education, life in mega cities and away from nature, toxic food, air, and water, social media, replacing real human connection and interaction, engineered financial crisis and taxation, endless wars and massive migration, stress, anxiety, depression, drugs and alcohol, constant fear-mongering, moral relativism as the new religion. And I could go on and on about how humanity has been influenced and forced to move away from all the things that give us strength, security, purpose, and meaning. A weak, immoral, disconnected, ignorant, and unhealthy population is an easy target for the next stage, the creation of an entire generation of androgynous beings.
Okay, now we get to, so you're saying there's all this control, but it's ultimately in the service of getting to phase 2, which is the creation of a population of androgynous beings.
Masculinity is under attack psychologically, culturally, and biologically. Women are being replaced in sports, entertainment, and politics by men pretending to be women. And children are being indoctrinated at school to think that gender is a choice. The transgender movement is not a grassroots movement. It comes from the top. It has nothing to do with people's freedom of expression, sexuality, or civil rights. It's an evil psyop with a clear agenda to get us closer to transhumanism by making us question the most fundamental notion of human identity, our gender.
Okay, I'll pause there. So her point is that, and this is interesting. I think this is something that I'm curious what your guys' thoughts are about this. So obviously there's a couple ways to think about the sudden obsession with gender. And oftentimes it's being framed as sort of a civil rights issue for a very small minority that need to be protected. I would say that's kind of like the secular framing. She is saying that this is all by way of really a collision between two massive forces. One force that is an attempt to remake the world in such a way that we can all transcend the basic elements of humanity, right? You basically have like a natural world, which is and a trans human world. That these two worlds are in conflict, and that's really the essence of what we're experiencing right now. So yeah, what are your guys' thoughts about that?
The result of it is usually a like decrease in fertility or repopulation, or procreation, and things like abortion. That's obvious. But even like the transgender movement, how that is not only creating people who don't want to have biological children, but are usually incapable of having biological children once they undergo certain hormones or surgeries. Um, and then even things like even just agriculture and like the meat industry and things like that, like how it's making us have like a sicker society than we ever have, causing us to be more sick and dependent and more diagnosed with mental illnesses. So not just like physical illnesses, but also mental illnesses. So I just think it's crazy that you can trace so many of these things back to that issue. And it seems like, I don't know if this is the they that she was talking about, but to me, it seemed like a lot of it was being pushed by the woke agenda.
Yeah. So there, I think really framing this as these two like big ideas about the nature of the world. So a big idea is the world is fundamentally well designed. That gender is a gift. That the natural world and the food and the closer you get to kind of creation's original design is always a positive thing, and that we are essentially beings that were designed for the reality that we're living in. I would say that's kind of the biblical idea. And then there's what I would say is a bit of a natural um, conclusion from more of an evolutionary worldview, which is, wow, in the universe, a being has evolved to suddenly seize control of a random process of evolution and steer it in whatever direction we want. And so let's take a big step back and think about what we want reality to look like. What do we want a human being to be? And really what's happening is this question is being asked within a cultural context in which freedom is the highest value, right? So we live and swim in a culture in which individual expression has become, in our culture, the one agreed upon massive top value. And so at the same moment, we are seizing control of our own evolution. This is according to this story. We, why not steer it in the direction of our highest value? This idea of individual self-expression. These are such different ways to view the world. It's hard to even overstate how radically different these ideas are.
I have had an Instagram and I have like taken breaks and I've been around kids when I didn't have a phone, and I have been around kids when I do have a phone, and I have been around kids when phones are like at school when they're not allowed to be out, and then when they are allowed to be out. And the differences in the way that we socialize is crazy. Like I have had the most fun, the most social interaction when I am around kids who aren't allowed to have their phone out, or kids that don't have social media. They have the most creative minds. They come up with games to play. Like it's when kids who have their phones out, they're just not talking about anything. Or when I'm around kids who are so deep in social media, they have nothing fruitful to talk about, and they can't come up with any ideas of what to do except to like watch something or talk about something they saw online. And it's become such a fruitless, mindless way of interacting with other kids. And like it's kind of scary and shocking. And I have been through like all the different kinds of people where I know this kid has been on YouTube Shorts or Instagram for like half of their day, and this is all they're thinking about, all they're talking about. Or I've been around kids who don't even have a phone, and they are incredibly enjoyable to be around. And like those differences, I think, are showing up in such young kids, and I can't imagine what the public schools look like right now.
Yeah, I feel like it's so hard to not think of this as a scheme because like they might be hard to like pinpoint as people, like as the government, is it the teachers? But I feel like since we believe in an enemy who schemes, I feel like it's so easy to just like point to him because it's so like well thought out. Because it started small. Like all of this stuff started small and is now like down this path, this slippery slope. It's good that they're not being killed or arrested or anything. But then as soon as that starts, then you start teaching kids that it's okay. Then we've just seen like a huge uprise in people who identify as gay or now like queer. When you start teaching it in the classroom, bringing it to children who wouldn't have even thought of that in the first place. And then that leads to teaching them about sex at a super young age, which has been crazy. And then teaching them about gender and like all these things. And it's really snowballed, and Beach was kind of a different place. And then she like talked about more modern stuff, like specifically modern stuff like the transgender movement and all of that, and how it's leading to kids questioning their gender and all these things. So yeah, I be well thought out and planned, and it's ended up here.
I heard a quote from Elon Musk once, and I'm gonna totally botch it, but he said something like, there's like the fear of overpopulation at one point, like a few decades ago. He was like, there's no more like better way to like go extinct than to believe that like procreating is a threat. Like that's the best way to go extinct, basically. And if you look at all of these issues and how they're like I don't know the statistic outcome of a lot of them is a less like lower population. You can see fertility, gendered kids, and whatever. Like what is that going to look like 50 years from now?